Picture this. You're sitting at a family dinner, the table buzzing with chatter, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Everyone's smiling, swapping stories and passing the mashed potatoes. But inside, you're simmering. Not because of anything anyone said, but because something feels off. The conversation feels like a script you've heard 1,000 times before. Predictable, shallow, like a sitcom rerun. You're not mad at the people around you. You love them. But there's a fire in your chest, a restless energy that makes you want to stand up, walk out, and scream into the void. Ever been there? That moment when the world feels too loud, too chaotic, and you're the only one who notices. You're not angry. You're not broken. You might just be seeing the world a little too clearly. If you've ever felt that spark of frustration, not at a person but at the noise of it all, then you're standing on the edge of a profound truth. It's not about being antisocial or short-tempered. It's about being awake in a world that's half asleep. And no one understood this better than some of the greatest minds in history. Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche, Søren Kierkegaard, and yes, our old friend, Arthur Schopenhauer. These thinkers didn't just tolerate their inner storms, they leaned into them. They saw anger, anxiety, and that restless itch as signals, not of weakness, but of clarity, of a mind that refuses to settle for the superficial. In this journey, we're going to dive deep into why the most perceptive people often feel the most unsettled. Why your anger isn't a flaw, but a flashlight illuminating truths others miss. Why your anxiety isn't a burden, but a compass pointing you toward meaning. And why stepping away from the crowd, embracing the chaos within, might just be the most courageous thing you ever do. So, buckle up. Let's explore the fire inside you through the lens of philosophy, storytelling, and a few hard-earned truths. Because by the end of this, you might just realize you're not angry, you're awake. Let's start with a story. A few years ago, I was at a friend's birthday party. Balloons, music, the whole deal. Everyone was having a blast, or at least pretending to. But halfway through, I found myself standing by the snack table, staring at a bowl of chips like it held the meaning of life. I wasn't bored, I wasn't annoyed at anyone, but I felt this weight. Like I was an alien in a room full of humans, watching them laugh and talk about nothing, work drama, weekend plans, the latest Netflix show. It wasn't that I didn't care about these people. I did. But the small talk, the forced smiles, the unspoken pressure to fit in felt like a costume I couldn't wear anymore. I slipped out early, drove home, and sat in silence for hours, feeling more alive in that quiet than I had all night. Sound familiar? That moment when the world feels like it's moving in slow motion and you're the only one who notices the cracks in the facade? That's not you being difficult or moody. That's your mind signaling that you're ready for something deeper. And Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who stared into the abyss and didn't blink, would have nodded in approval. Nietzsche didn't see anger or restlessness as problems to be fixed. He saw them as sparks of vitality, proof that you're alive in a way most people never are. Nietzsche once wrote, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." But let's dig into what he meant. He wasn't talking about physical survival or some motivational poster cliché. He was talking about the inner fire, the frustration, the rage, the anxiety that burns when you see the world for what it is. A chaotic, messy, often absurd place. Most people numb that fire with distractions, scrolling through their phones, chasing promotions, or drowning in small talk. But the perceptive person, they feel the heat. They don't run from it. They let it burn because they know it's trying to tell them something. Think about it. When was the last time you got angry? Not at a person, but at life. Maybe it was the news, with its endless cycle of fear and division. Maybe it was a conversation that felt like a dead end, or a job that's draining your soul. That anger isn't just a tantrum. It's your mind screaming, "This isn't enough. There's more to life than this." Nietzsche would say that's your will to power waking up, the drive to create, to question, to break free from the ordinary and build something extraordinary. It's not about being destructive, it's about being alive. But here's the catch. That fire can feel like a curse. It sets you apart. It makes you question things others take for granted. Why we chase status, why we cling to traditions, why we pretend everything's fine when it's not. And that's where the anxiety creeps in. You start to wonder, am I the only one who feels this way? Am I broken? Spoiler alert, you're not. You're just awake. And Nietzsche, with his wild moustache and wilder ideas, would tell you to embrace that discomfort. Because it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign you're starting to see through the illusions.
Now let's bring in another giant, Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher who wrestled with anxiety like it was his full-time job. Kierkegaard didn't just think about anxiety, he lived it. He called it the dizziness of freedom, that overwhelming feeling when you realize you're not just a cog in the machine, but a free individual with the power to shape your own life. Sounds liberating, right? But here's the twist. That freedom comes with a price. The moment you realize you can choose your path, you also realize how much of the world is built on autopilot. People following scripts, chasing goals they didn't choose, living lives that aren't really theirs. And that realization, it's heavy. Kierkegaard believed that anxiety is the natural response to waking up. When you start questioning the why behind everything, why you're working that job, why you're chasing that relationship, why society is obsessed with likes and followers, you're no longer just living, you're thinking. And thinking, really thinking, is a lonely business. It's like waking up in the middle of a party and realizing everyone else is sleepwalking. You want to shake them, to scream, "Wake up!" But they just keep dancing, oblivious to the deeper questions burning inside you.
Let me tell you about my friend, Sarah. She's a lawyer, sharp as a tack, always the smartest person in the room. A couple of years ago, she started feeling this gnawing anxiety. She had the corner office, the fancy car, the Instagram perfect life, but late at night, she'd lie awake, heart racing, asking herself, is this it? Is this what I'm supposed to want? She wasn't ungrateful. She just couldn't shake the feeling that she was living someone else's dream. When she tried talking to her colleagues or family about it, they brushed it off. "You're successful. What's there to complain about?" But Sarah wasn't complaining. She was waking up. Kierkegaard would have sat her down and said, "That anxiety, it's not your enemy, it's your soul trying to break free." He argued that anxiety is what happens when you stand at the edge of your own potential. It's the vertigo of realizing you could live differently, more authentically, more meaningfully, but it means stepping away from the crowd. It means facing the uncertainty of forging your own path. And that, my friend, is terrifying, but it's also the birthplace of freedom. Here's where it gets practical. That anxiety you feel when you're stuck in a job that doesn't light you up, or when you're scrolling through social media wondering why everyone else seems so happy. That's not a flaw. That's your mind telling you it's time to stop playing the game. Kierkegaard would say it's time to take a leap of faith, not in a religious sense, though he was big on that, but in yourself. To trust that the discomfort you feel is guiding you toward a life that's more you. But it starts with embracing the tension, not running from it. Now let's bring in the philosopher who ties this all together. Arthur Schopenhauer, the guy who looked at the world and said, "Yeah, it's kind of a mess, but there's beauty in the chaos." Schopenhauer didn't sugarcoat things. He believed life is driven by what he called the will, a blind, relentless force that keeps us chasing desires we can never fully satisfy. A new car? You'll want a better one. A promotion? You'll crave the next one. A perfect relationship? Good luck keeping that spark alive forever. For Schopenhauer, this endless wanting is the root of our suffering, and the more you see it, the more it hurts. But here's where Schopenhauer gets interesting. He didn't think intelligent people are immune to this suffering. In fact, he thought they feel it more. Why? Because they see the game for what it is. Most people go through life chasing the next shiny thing, never questioning why. But the perceptive person, the one who feels that spark of anger or anxiety, starts to see the pattern. They notice that the things society tells us to want, money, fame, approval, don't actually fill the void. And that realization, it's like waking up in the Matrix. It's liberating, but it's also isolating. Schopenhauer wrote, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him." Ouch. But he's got a point. If you're content with surface-level life, binge-watching shows, chasing likes, following the script, you might never feel that restless fire. But if you're the kind of person who asks, "What's the point of all this?" Well, congratulations. You're awake. And being awake means you're going to feel the weight of the world in a way others don't. Let's go back to that party I mentioned earlier. When I left early and sat in silence, it wasn't because I hated the people there. It was because I couldn't keep pretending that small talk was enough. I wanted to talk about life, death, meaning, big, scary stuff. But most people don't want to go there. And Schopenhauer would say that's because they're afraid of what they'd find. The intelligent person, though, they're not afraid. Or at least they're willing to face the fear. They'd rather sit alone with the truth than drown in the noise of distraction. Here's a question for you. When was the last time you let yourself feel that fire, anger, anxiety, or just a vague sense that something's wrong, without trying to fix it, without reaching for your phone, or a drink, or a Netflix marathon? Because Schopenhauer believed that in those moments of discomfort, you're not falling apart, you're breaking through. You're starting to see the world without the rose-colored glasses society hands out. And that clarity? It's a gift, even if it feels like a punch to the gut. So, what do you do with all this? You're awake, you're restless, you're seeing the world too clearly. Now what? This is where our philosophers converge on a single radical idea. You have to step away. Not from life, but from the illusions that keep you tethered to a version of yourself you don't recognize. Nietzsche called it becoming who you are. Kierkegaard called it the leap of faith. Schopenhauer called it detachment. But they're all pointing to the same truth. Real freedom comes when you stop performing for the crowd and start listening to the voice inside. Let's talk about my cousin, Jake. He's a graphic designer, wildly talented, but for years he worked at an agency that churned out soulless corporate ads. He was miserable, but he stayed because it was safe. Good salary, benefits, the whole deal. But every day he'd come home angry, not at his boss, not at his co-workers, but at himself. He knew he was meant for more, but he was terrified to walk away. One night, over a beer, he told me, "I feel like I'm betraying myself every time I clock in." That's the fire we're talking about. That's the clarity. Jake eventually quit. He freelanced, took a pay cut, and started creating art that actually meant something to him. It wasn't easy. He had to face his fears, failure, judgment, uncertainty. But he told me recently, for the first time, I feel like I'm living my own life, not someone else's. That's what Nietzsche meant by becoming who you are. It's what Kierkegaard meant by the leap of faith. It's what Schopenhauer meant by detachment, not running away, but choosing what matters. Here's the practical takeaway. That anger, that anxiety, that restlessness you feel, it's not telling you to lash out or give up. It's telling you to choose, to stop chasing what the world tells you to want and start chasing what sets your soul on fire. Maybe that means leaving a job that's killing you. Maybe it means setting boundaries with people who drain you. Maybe it just means carving out an hour a day to sit in silence and listen to yourself. Whatever it is, it starts with courage. The courage to stand alone, even for a moment, and trust that the fire inside you is leading somewhere worth going. Now, let's get to the heart of it. The beauty of turning inward. Schopenhauer, in particular, was obsessed with the inner world. He believed that the most profound truths about yourself, about life, about the universe, aren't found in crowds or on social media feeds. They're found in silence, in solitude, in the moments when you stop running and start listening. And here's the kicker. That inner world isn't empty. It's not a void. It's a universe, vast and rich and waiting to be explored. Think about the last time you were truly alone, not just physically, but mentally. No phone, no TV, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. What did you find? For a lot of people, that kind of silence is terrifying. It's like staring into a mirror that shows every flaw, every fear, every question you've been avoiding. But Schopenhauer would say that's exactly why it's so powerful. In solitude, you confront the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are. And in that confrontation, you start to build something real, not a persona, not a performance, but a self. Here's a story from history to drive this home. When Nietzsche wrote "Thus Spoke Zarathustra," one of his most famous works, he did it in almost complete isolation, high up in the Swiss Alps. He'd walk for hours, alone with his thoughts, letting the ideas pour out of him. The result? A book that's still shaking minds over a century later. That kind of clarity doesn't come from brainstorming sessions or networking events. It comes from diving deep into the inner world where the noise of the crowd can't reach. And here's where it gets practical again. You don't need to move to the mountains to find that clarity. You can start small. Take a walk without your phone, sit in a quiet room and let your thoughts wander. Read a book, not for answers, but for questions. The goal isn't to fix your anger or anxiety, it's to listen to what they're telling you. Because those feelings? They're not random. They're your mind's way of saying, hey, there's more to you than this. There's more to life than this. Let's wrap this up with a call to action, a quiet rebellion. Because that's what this is, really. In a world that's obsessed with likes, followers, and fitting in, choosing to listen to your inner fire is a radical act. It's saying no to the scripts society hands you. It's refusing to play the game just because everyone else is. And it's trusting that your anger, your anxiety, your restlessness aren't signs of weakness, they're signs of strength. Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, and Schopenhauer all believed that the most meaningful life is the one you create for yourself, not the one you inherit from your parents, your culture, or your Instagram feed. And creating that life starts with embracing the discomfort of being awake. It means letting your anger point you toward what matters, letting your anxiety guide you toward freedom, letting your restlessness push you toward purpose. So, here's your challenge. The next time you feel that fire, whether it's anger at the world, anxiety about your place in it, or just a vague sense that something's off, don't run from it. Don't distract yourself, lean into it. Ask yourself, what's this feeling trying to tell me? What's it asking me to change? Maybe it's a small change, like saying no to a commitment that doesn't serve you. Maybe it's a big one, like walking away from a life that's not yours. Whatever it is, trust that it's leading you somewhere real. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to do this alone forever. Solitude isn't the end game, it's the starting point. Once you've found that inner clarity, you can bring it back to the world. You can connect with people, not as a performer, but as yourself. You can love, create, and live without losing who you are. Because when you've faced the fire inside, the noise of the world doesn't scare you anymore. So, let's end where we started. That spark of anger, that knot of anxiety, that restless itch that makes you want to scream. It's not your enemy. It's your ally. It's the part of you that's awake, that sees the world for what it is, that refuses to settle for less than you deserve. Nietzsche would call it your will to power. Kierkegaard would call it your leap of faith. Schopenhauer would call it your path to detachment. But whatever you call it, it's yours, and it's leading you somewhere extraordinary. The next time you feel that fire, don't put it out. Let it burn, let it guide you. Because you're not angry, you're awake. And in that awakening, you'll find not just truth, but freedom. The freedom to live a life that's not just good, but yours. So, what's one thing you can do today to honor that fire? To listen to it instead of silencing it? Maybe it's taking a quiet walk. Maybe it's saying no to something that doesn't feel right. Maybe it's just sitting with yourself and asking, what do I really want? Whatever it is, take that step. Because the world needs more people who are awake, and it starts with you.